Southwark has a long theatrical and literary history, from the Swan Theatre and the Globe through to the works of Chaucer and Dickens. And that artistic tradition continues at Southwark Cathedral, which this year hosts a revival of a contemporary mystery play written by a local playwright.
The English mystery play tradition goes back to medieval times when whole communities would retell the old Bible stories, but using their own language and their own time and place. So it was making the stories relevant to their own time and place. And I've attempted to do something similar, to write a contemporary cycle of mystery plays, but setting it in the history of Southwark, which is, of course, the oldest part of London. It's 2,000 years old, going back to the Romans at least.
Originally written and performed in the Millennium year, the play was a collaboration between John and the Dean of Southwark, Colin Slee.
John's fascinating. John's slightly maverick. We had to do quite a lot of work introducing John to what major biblical stories were and what they all meant, but that's actually our job. So that, in a way, is quite refreshing. And the lovely thing was he was really keen to discover.
John's main character, the Goose, was inspired by the discovery of an unconsecrated graveyard where local women of the night were said to have been buried.
The seed of the Southwark Mysteries is the idea that the spirit of the Goose, one of the prostitutes buried in Crossbones, has returned to tell her own version of history, her secret history. The Goose becomes the central character and the focus for the grace of God and for the forgiveness of Christ. I was born a goose of Southwark by the grace of Mary Overy, whose bishop gives me license to sin within the liberty. In bankside stews and taverns, you can hear me honk right daintily as I unlock the hidden door, unveil the secret history. It takes the idea of forgiveness, and particularly of mutual forgiveness, as being at the heart of what Christianity is all about. And it sets that particularly against the idea that Christianity is about judgment. And the idea that very strongly presented again and again by Jesus in the Southwark Mysteries is the idea that when we judge another, effectively we lose sight of our own spiritual authenticity, our own spiritual journey even. And that, in fact, to judge another is in itself the sin.
I think he's had some very interesting ideas. And some of the themes that come through about prostitution, about suffering, are all quite on the edge in the sense that they challenge people.
And it was fantastic.
Colin did very much try to guide me in a direction that he felt was right for the mystery play tradition. And of course, as the writer, I was also quite robustly stating what I felt was original and authentic and unique. Lord, if you would but make it clear how each soul may be named and known. Jesus replies, he that has ears to hear, let him hear. Then let him judge himself alone.
Not surprisingly, perhaps, the first performance did attract some criticism.
There were lots of objections about Satan's language. This is actually taken from the original mystery play tradition. Satan always uses very bad language, even with God and with Jesus.
This church in particular is quite used to pushing boundaries and being controversial. In the 1960s, it was South Bank religion. When I first arrived here, it was because we had the lesbian and gay Christian movement celebrate an anniversary here. So we're quite used to things that are quite difficult. I actually believe that's part of not only our job here in Southwark, but every cathedral's job. And cathedrals should be, as it were, on the edge of the establishment. The gospel is about controversy. That's why Jesus gets crucified. The gospel is not uncontroversial. 2,000 years later, we think of it as being really, quite tame. This is not so. And if the gospel challenges people and is presented in new ways that they find difficult, I don't suggest for 1 minute they have to accept the way it's been presented, but if it challenges them to think, that can be a good thing.
Well,